What up guys, GangstaPranksta back with a brand new video, and today I am here with a brand new wrestling video, kind of a throwback video. I actually did one of these last year, and I've done a bunch of these over the years, but I've kind of slowed down because I haven't done as much wrestling content. But I've done one of these as recent of last year, and it's kind of the same situation. So today's video, as you can tell by the title, I am doing a how I would book AEW All In and AEW All Out pay-per-views, which will be happening at the end of the month. So like I mentioned earlier, I did one of these last year, and it was a very similar scenario where last year for AEW All Out, you know, it's one of their biggest pay-per-views of the year. They only do 4 pay-per-views a year, so I guess each one's important. But leading up to the show, I think it was like 2 weeks away or something, there had only been like 2 matches announced at that point. And with this year, it's kind of different because there's a lot more on the line, because not only do you have All In, but you also have All Out. And with All In being such an important pay-per-view, you know, in Wembley Stadium, they have 77,000 tickets sold. This could potentially be the biggest crowd that they ever compete in front of. And the fact they've even sold 77,000 tickets without any matches announced is crazy. But we're kind of getting to the point where the show's at the end of the month. Let's announce some goddamn matches. Now, this past week on Dynamite, we finally got our first match announced, which was Adam Cole and MJF. Cool that they're doing a big match there. They're doing the rematch for the title. But not only does AEW and Tony Khan have to worry about putting on a great show for your all-in crowd at Wembley Stadium, the next week after that, they have their other pay-per-view, AEW All Out, and as of right now, there's only one match for that pay-per-view as well, which is Darby Allin versus Luchasaurus for the TNT title. So, very weak-looking cards going into like your biggest pay-per-views of the summer. Personally, I don't think it was a great idea to do a pay-per-view one week and then do another one the following week after that. It just seems like a recipe for disaster. Like, how are you going to focus on one over the other? Like, stress the importance. What matches are you going to focus? Are you going to save your big matches for All Out, which is like your very big pay-per-view? Or do you use some of those big matches and put it in for the All-In pay-per-view in front of Wembley Stadium? So they're kind of in a bit of a pickle. And I was kind of thinking to myself, you know, they got 2 pay-per-views they got to book. They barely got any matches. If I was in charge, what would I do? What would be the cards that I put together? And that's what we're here with today. I have built my own pay-per-view card. I've got a whole pay-per-view of All In, got that show booked. I've got All Out, and I've also got a Collision show because Collision is now on Saturdays, and they're doing their pay-per-views on Sundays, so I've kind of loaded up Collision to be a pretty big show. Like all the big matches that I couldn't have on the pay-per-view, I'm kind of having a couple on the Collision show, so it's pretty loaded. We're going to start with All In because that's the pay-per-view in chronological order that's going to be coming up first. I put together a pretty good card, I think. You guys can let me know in the comment section. Also, before we even get into this, if you guys did not watch my video from last year where I booked AEW All Out, and I also booked the Trios tournament. That was all in one video. I did the Trios tournament, and then they were going to have the finals at the All Out pay-per-view, and I did the All Out pay-per-view as a whole. And I also did a special Rampage booking, where the same thing as I'm doing with Collision here, matches that couldn't kind of fit on the card, or maybe not big enough, I put it on to make a special Rampage episode. So, in case you missed that, I will put a link to it in the description. I thought it was a pretty good show. You guys can let me know in the comment section. But without further ado, let's get into this pay-per-view. We're starting out with AEW All In. I've got 11 matches on the main card, and I've also got some pre-show matches. I was debating doing the pre-show matches because I already have 11 matches on the main card. Do I really want to have a couple extra matches on the pre-show? And I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make a pre-show out of it. So I've got 3 matches for the pre-show. We'll quickly go through those, and I'll explain the stories as I go along that each match kind of has, and the storyline that I've put together to build the match upon. So, starting out with the pre-show, the first match for the pre-show, we've got a Ring of Honor title match. It is the Ring of Honor TV title will be defended from Samoa Joe, and he will be defending his title against Shawn Spears. Originally, I had Angelico in this, and it was kind of just going to be a squash match, like semi-competitive squash match for Joe to just kind of demolish somebody. But then I'm like, you know what? Let me kind of get like a bigger guy who can kind of put up a fight against Joe. And I was looking through the roster of guys that I wasn't going to be using for the show, and I saw Shawn Spears' name, and I'm like, you know what? I think they can put on a pretty decent match, and that's actually a match I would kind of want to see, Samoa Joe versus Shawn Spears. No real story for this one. It would just kind of be someone for Samoa Joe to, I don't want to say eat up or destroy, but that's kind of what it would be, just for him to get another win under his belt. And he'd be someone I'd look at potentially pushing in the future, so a big win here I think could kind of, you know, give him some momentum. So no real storyline for this, it's just kind of a match. Next match on the pre-show, we've got the team of Kip Sabian, the Butcher, and the Blade taking on Matt Menard, Angelo Parker, and Jake Hager. There is a little bit of a story for this one. Now, originally I was trying to find a couple things for Kip Sabian to do because they are going to be in England. He is from England, he's British, so I'm like, how can I kind of fit him on the card? I couldn't really think of anything, and then it kind of popped into my head where this storyline kind of came together. So the storyline would be Matt Menard, Angelo Parker, and Jake Hager. Jericho Appreciation Society is broken up, and they're kind of looking at like what the next step is going to be. And Matt Menard would basically be looking to recruit people, and he would go to the Butcher and be like, hey, we were in the Blind Eliminator Tag Team Tournament, we were Magic Meat, you know, we had a special thing going on. How about you leave your little dorks, Blade and Kip Sabian, because they're a little group, and, you know, come join our new group. We're not sure what it's called, but we're putting together some pieces, and, you know, we think you'd be a nice piece in this puzzle of ours. And basically, Kip Sabian would be like, hey, mate, bug off, you know, in a British accent, of course. And this would kind of lead to a six-man tag at the pay-per-view, so it'd be Kip Sabian, Butcher, Blade versus Matt Menard, Angelo Parker, and Jake Hager. Kind of a weird match because they're both heels, but I think by default, Kip Sabian and his team would be the baby faces because, you know, he's got the crowd on his side. I would definitely put them over in the match. I would go with Kip Sabian, Butcher, and Blade. I would keep them as a trio. Even though they're not really doing anything on like AEW or even Ring of Honor, I'd still kind of keep them together as a little group. I think they're a fun little unit to see from time to time. And with Matt Menard and Angelo Parker, I don't know what I would do with them next, but I'd kind of cause dissension here where Jake Hager's like, oh man, we lost this match. You know, I think I'm kind of done with you guys. I'm going to kind of go carve out my own path. So I'd kind of break up Jake Hager from Angelo Parker and Matt Menard. I don't know what I would do with them after, but I think splitting them from Jake Hager would probably be something that I would do next. And then the next match and the last match on the pre-show would kind of come from the last match that we just talked about, the six-man tag, and it would be Penelope Ford versus Anna Jay. Anna Jay would kind of be part of that, you know, group with Matt Menard, Angelo Parker, and Jake Hager, and same thing with Penelope Ford, her husband, Kip Sabian, Butcher, and the Blade. So after the match, there would have been like a little bit of a brawl between the two, and it would kind of lead to an impromptu match between Penelope Ford and Anna Jay, and I would give the win to Penelope Ford. She's actually someone I would like to see get a little bit of a push in the women's division. I haven't seen too much of her work, but I've seen enough to think that she does have some potential. With Anna Jay, it's a very hit and miss, so I would definitely give the win to Penelope and potentially build her as a contender in the future for the women's title. Or maybe even the TBS title. I don't know which one, but one of those. For a title contention in the future. So that was the pre-show for All In, and now we are going to get into the card. And like I said, 11 matches, and the order that I'm going to go in is the order that I would actually put them in the card. So my opening match would be Andrade El Idolo taking on Malachi Black in a one-on-one match. Andrade has been doing some awesome stuff on Collision. I've been kind of keeping up with it, and he's been feuding with Malachi Black in the House of Black. They just had that big ladder match on Collision with Buddy Matthews and Andrade, and I think he had a match against Brody King. I don't remember off the top of my head, but he's definitely beaten Buddy Matthews twice at this point. So it seems like they're kind of building towards a match between Malachi Black and Andrade, and that's the match that I would have here on this card. And I would have Malachi Black go over on this one here due to interference from the House of Black. And actually, I would use this as kind of an angle to set up a match for All Out, which would be basically LFI versus House of Black for the AEW Trios title. I will talk more about that match when we get to All Out. But for here, it would just be a one-on-one match, and I would give the win to Malachi Black due to interference from the House of Black. Next match on the card is a match I was kind of undecided about. I was going to pick between two, and I'll mention what both matches were, but the match that I ended up going for the pay-per-view would be Bullet Club Gold in an 8-man tag team action against Ethan Page, the Hardy Boys, and Pac. The storyline here would be the Hardys and the Guns have had their issues in the past few months. The Guns ended up attacking the Hardy Boys and took out Jeff after their tag team match, so this would kind of be a continuation of that. And then you've got Jay White and Juice Robinson, and Ethan Page would kind of be out there to even the odds. And then with Pac, he's another one with Kip Sabian where he's like, he's British, so I gotta have him in the show in some capacity. I don't really know what to do with him. Hey, let me have him be in this 8-man tag. And then I would actually use this to set up a match between Pac and Jay White, and I would have that match at All Out as well. The other match I had in place of this was also an 8-man tag with Bullet Club Gold, because I did want to have them on the pay-per-view, and the team that they would have taken on would be the Hardy Boys and the Acclaimed, and the storyline with that would be the Guns making fun of Billy Gunn for retiring. That would bring out the Acclaimed to be like, hey, that's your dad, but you know what? He hates you guys. He loved us. We're the sons he wish he had. And of course, the Hardy Boys, they had their issues with the Guns, like I mentioned before, and it would kind of lead to an 8-man tag between Bullet Club Gold versus the Acclaimed and Hardys. I honestly was going to go with that match because I would love to hear the crowd fucking explode for the Hardys and the Acclaimed. I think the crowd would lose their mind because the crowd's going to pop for the Hardys no matter what, because everyone loves the Hardys and everyone loves the Acclaimed. So to have those two teams on the same team, I think the arena would have went fucking insane. But I decided to go with the Bullet Club Gold versus Ethan Page, Hardy Boys, and Pac, because you got to put that hometown boy in a big match, and I think that would be the match to go with. I would probably give the win to Ethan Page, the Hardy Boys, and Pac. You know, we're in Wembley Stadium in front of a British crowd. I think you got to give the big win to the baby faces here. And we'll talk more about Pac versus Jay White in All Out. So we'll talk about that in a second. After that, we've got Jack Perry defending the FTW title against RVD. So if you watched Dynamite this past week, we had the debut of RVD in AEW, which was super cool to see. Came out to Walk by Pantera. Fucking really, really cool moments. But I don't like the fact that they're building this match and having it the next week. Like the next Dynamite, they're supposed to blow off this match. Now, there might be some shenanigans, and it might lead to another rematch at the pay-per-view at All In. But for me, I would save this match for the pay-per-view. You know, if you're going to have RVD come and do a big match, have it do it in front of a big crowd. You know, you paid for the rights for Pantera, for Walk by Pantera. Have it in Wembley Stadium. Have the crowd go absolutely nuts for him. I think it would be an awesome moment. Now, they might end up doing that, but the fact that they're even doing it on Dynamite instead of kind of building it out is kind of dumb in my opinion. For me, what I would have done is instead of having RV, so let's back up this whole thing. So for me, I would take this angle from when he had that confrontation with Jerry Lynn after he won the FTW title, and you know, he'd be shitting on ECW and say, you know, they're a bunch of losers, no good wrestlers won the FTW title ever. I'm gonna bring this title to prominence. And then, like what happened on AEW Dynamite, you had Jerry Lynn come out and kind of defend, say they're gonna have some sort of confrontation next week. And what I would do is just basically have Jack Perry attack Jerry Lynn, leave him bloody, and being like, you know what? You have nobody. There's nobody in ECW. All you guys are either dead or you're drug addicts or you're broken down, you know? You've got nobody. But I'm going to issue an open challenge for next week on Dynamite. Any living ECW superstar that wants to try and take this FTW title away from me, the floor is yours. So what I would do is have a big match there on a Dynamite, and basically it would be Jack Perry, and the person that came to mind, I had two people that came to mind. The first one was Blue Meanie. I think he would be just kind of a fun one-time appearance. They're not going to put on some match. It would basically be just a quick little match between him and Jack Perry, just so he could get a quick win over a former ECW guy and, continue to make his point. The other person I had in mind was Tajiri, and then I was like, man, I would actually really like to see Jack Perry and Tajiri. I think they could put on a killer match. But I think I would actually hold off on Tajiri. Maybe we'll use him further down the line. But I would probably pick out someone like Blue Meanie, have him come in. They do a 2-minute match. Jack Perry, he's young and quick. Blue Meanie, he's a bigger, slower individual, not really known to be a mat wrestler of sorts. So I'd have Jack Perry make quick work of him, and then after the match, Jack Perry would attack Blue Meanie, and then you'd have Jerry Lynn make the save, and then Jerry Lynn would be like, hey, I see you left Blue Meanie here. You left him here in a pool of his own blood. Well, you know what? You want to mock ECW? I've got the person to defend ECW. People call him Mr. ECW, and that person's going to be RVD, and you're going to see him at All In. And, Jack Perry would be like, what the fuck, RVD? And maybe you even have RVD come out on the stage and, do his little taunt. Maybe chase Jack Perry into the crowd. And then you have Blue Meanie, Jerry Lynn, and RVD, pose in the crowd. Just a little bit more build-up. In my opinion, I think that would work a lot more. And then obviously that leads to the big match at the pay-per-view, RVD versus Jack Perry. Obviously, I would have Jack Perry win here. There's no reason for him to lose to RVD. This is just mainly like a one-off special thing for AEW All In. Special person to come in and kind of pop the crowd. So I'd have Jack Perry here. I would probably even do a post-match angle with him trying to attack RVD and take him out. And then you have Hook come and make the save. And then obviously that would set up a match for All Out. So as you can see what I'm doing with All In, a lot of these matches are setting up matches for All Out. I still think the card for the All In pay-per-view is solid, but because we have a pay-per-view the next week after, we have to save some matches and build up some matches, so I'm slowly building up a couple matches for All Out. So you'll see that with the next few matches as well. So Jack Perry up over RVD. After that, I got a 10-man tag team match, and it is the team of the Mogul Embassy, which is Swerve Strickland, AR Fox, Brian Cage, and the Gates of Agony, taking on the team of Darby Allin, Sting, Nick Wayne, Keith Lee, and Dustin Rhodes. Obviously, they're having that big angle on Dynamite between AR Fox, him betraying Darby Allin, joining the Mogul Embassy. They had that awesome little segment where they attacked Nick Wayne at the Buddy Wayne Academy. And goddamn, I hope Nick Wayne's okay, because he looked like he cut himself pretty deep. He was just bleeding all over the place. It was kind of scary. It looked like a horror movie. So I would use all that to kind of build it up to a 10-man tag. Obviously, you got the Mogul Embassy and all those members that I mentioned before. And then, the team of Darby, Sting, and Nick Wayne. That makes sense. You've got Keith Lee and Dustin Rhodes, who have had their issues with Swerve Strickland in the past. Makes sense for them to be on the team. And for here, I'd probably give the win to Mogul Embassy if I was to pick a winner. I think they need some momentum, and I think this would be a good match to kind of put them over. I like what they've been doing with Swerve Strickland. I'm very interested to see how they continue to elevate him. Every time I see Swerve Strickland, he just seems to kind of keep elevating himself, and I've really been enjoying watching him. That is someone I would love to see pushed into some sort of title picture, whether it be the TNT title, international title, some sort of title contention. I would love to see Swerve win some gold, so I'm going to go with Mogul Embassy here. And this match will also be used to build to a couple matches on All Out and Collision. We'll talk about that later. Next match, we got Luchasaurus and Christian Cage in his corner defending the AEW TNT title against Ricky Starks. So, AEW is doing right now, they're building towards a big match between Luchasaurus and Darby Allin for the TNT title. I don't think that's the best thing to do right now. You've got Darby Allin doing some stuff with Mogul Embassy, Swerve, and AR Fox, and then you've got him also feuding with, Luchasaurus. For me, it's pick one or the other, don't have them do both. For me, I would have him focus on the Swerve Strickland, AR Fox stuff, and let somebody else challenge for the TNT title. And the person I would pick is Ricky Starks. Now, I would keep him as a babyface. I know AEW's kind of done some heel stuff with him, and that's fine. I don't know what they're kind of building towards, but for me, I would keep him as a babyface. And after having him win the Owen Cup tournaments, I would have him come out and cut a promo and be like, you know, this cup means a lot to me. I looked up to Owen. He was one of my favorite wrestlers, and I want to make him proud. I want to win some gold. And then maybe have Christian Cage being like, I knew Owen Hart. He would not like you. He would think you're the biggest piece of shit. Owen Hart is a Canadian legend. You're not even Canadian. Just kind of going off on him. Little side note here, I've been loving the Christian Cage stuff. Thing that he just did on Collision with his daughter. Hilarious. I fucking loved it. I'm a huge fan of Christian Cage. I've always been a fan of Christian, but I think he's doing some of his finest work in AEW at the moment. Between the Jack Perry feud and the stuff that he's doing now with Luchasaurus. Love it. I hope it continues. So I would use all that to kind of build up Ricky Starks as a #1 contender for the TNT title, and I would have the match here. And me personally, I would have Ricky Starks win the TNT title here. I do like Luchasaurus as the TNT champion, even though it's really mainly Christian that's been getting a lot of the accolades. I'm happy that they're doing some stuff with Luchasaurus just as a single, heel big guy. I'm a big fan of that, and I'm a big fan of his team with Christian. But yeah, I think Ricky Starks would be the person to kind of put the title on. And we'll be talking about Ricky Starks again going into All Out. We'll talk about that in a second. We're continuing on with All In. Next match on the All In pay-per-view, we've got the Blackpool Combat Club in 6-man tag team action against the Best Friends and Orange Cassidy. Blackpool Combat Club will be represented by Jon Moxley, Wheeler Yuta, and Claudio Castagnoli. And as you can see, they've been feuding a lot on AEW right now. And honestly, I would kind of keep this feud. I like what they've been doing with the Best Friends. I like that they've done, they did the parking lot match. They did the three-way tag team match the other week on Dynamite. Best Friends, Blackpool Combat Club, and Lucha Bros. And then they had the three-way after that, Jon Moxley, Penta, and Trent. I like that they've been using the Best Friends. I'm a big fan of the Best Friends and Orange Cassidy, so it's good to see them being used again. For me, I would do a 6-man tag team match here. I would continue on with them doing like whatever they're doing on Dynamite. This would be a feud that I would continue, and I would have the 6-man tag team match here. And then at All Out, I would have Jon Moxley versus Orange Cassidy for the AEW International title. And I'll have another match as well, kind of spawning from this. But I think for this pay-per-view, I would probably go Blackpool Combat Club to win this. For me, I think they're more of a solid unit. They've done a lot more tag team matches and like Best Friends and Orange Cassidy. It's been a while since they've done some 6-man tag team action, so you can kind of use that as like a storyline reason why they lost. But yeah, for me personally, I would go Blackpool Combat Club here over Best Friends and Orange Cassidy. Next match on the show, we've got CM Punk going one-on-one with Zack Sabre Jr. So I do have big plans for Punk at All Out, which we'll talk about later, but I thought it would be good to have a big match with him here, and I was trying to think about who would be good to put him in a match with to kind of set him up to, have that big match at All Out. And I was thinking, and I'm like, maybe we can take some guys from New Japan. We got like Will Ospreay, Zack Sabre Jr., they're from England, and I'm like, you know what? You got Zack Sabre Jr., he thinks he's the best wrestler in the world. CM Punk, best in the world. Obviously, the money match with Zack Sabre Jr. would be him against Bryan Danielson, but Bryan Danielson is out at the moment, so I would actually have him wrestle Punk here, and I would have Punk go over because, like I mentioned, I do have a big match for him planned at All Out. But I think this would be a fun little match to have. Zack Sabre Jr. and CM Punk one-on-one in All In. I would be very interested in the crowd reactions. Obviously, they're going to cheer for Zack Sabre, but with Punk, he's been getting a lot of mixed receptions going from city to city. So I'm interested to see how England would take to CM Punk. But yeah, I would have him go over Zack Sabre here. And this would be a non-title match because I know Zack Sabre is the New Japan TV champion or something like that. So it would be non-title match, just one-on-one. After that, we've got an AEW women's title match, and it is the new champion Hikaru Shida taking on Saraya. I mean, that's the really only match that makes sense for the women at the moment. The women's division is in a very weird state where the big feud was the Outcasts taking on like AEW Originals, but now that Jamie Hayter's out injured, everything just kind of seems to be up in the air. So for me, with Hikaru Shida, I would kind of start new. And I know her taking on Saraya is not new, but as you will see what I'm going to do here and what I'm going to do at All Out, we're going to kind of reset the women's division in AEW. So here I would have Hikaru Shida versus Saraya. Like I said, this is the only match that makes sense. Saraya, hometown girl. Hikaru Shida, she's the new women's champion. Saraya kind of representing the Outcast because, you know, Toni Storm just lost her title to Hikaru Shida. So that's the match I would have here, Hikaru versus Saraya. I would have a Hikaru retain here over Saraya, and I will explain why after. But yeah, Hikaru wins. Clean win over Saraya. Next match is an interesting one because I had two options here and I went with one over the other, obviously, and I'll talk about why. So the match I am referring to is Chris Jericho and Konosuke Takeshita taking on the team of Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi. So originally the match that I had planned was actually a 6-man tag team match, and it would be Jericho, Takeshita, and Will Ospreay teaming up to take on Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, and Kota Ibushi. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to change it to a tag team match. I'll explain that more in a second. But yeah, so it would be Jericho, Takeshita versus Omega and Ibushi. And for this one, I'm not sure who I'd go over. For this one, I think the heels would probably win it if I had to pick a winner. And I'll tell you why in a second. Just looking at my notes here, and I'm gonna go with the heels take the win here. Jericho and Takeshita, they defeat the Golden Lovers of Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi. So we all know the story here. Kenny Omega and Takeshita, I actually have them going one-on-one at All Out. That's one of the matches I have planned. I was thinking about doing it at All In, but I'm like, you know what? We'll do a little bit of build-up here. We'll kind of have them face each other somewhat in a tag team match, and then we'll have the big one-on-one blow-off match at All Out. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Jericho and Takeshita to beat the Golden Lovers. Next match on the card, two people I just kind of finished talking about in the other match. It is going to be Hangman Page versus Will Ospreay for the IWGP US title. Will Ospreay was always someone I wanted to include in this pay-per-view, and like I mentioned with Zack Sabre Jr., you gotta use the hometown guys. And the story I would kind of build towards would be Will Ospreay. He would come to Dynamite and be like, or maybe even a promo, because I know he's in the G1 at the moment. Basically, he would be like, hey, Kenny, I'm challenging you to Ospreay Omega 3, and we're doing it in my hometown of England. I'm going to embarrass you in front of my friends and family. You know, I did it in front of yours. I did in Canada. I beat you. But now we're going to do it in my backyard. And I'm going to truly prove to you who is the better of the two of us. And basically, I would have Hangman Page kind of intercept this request and be like, you know what? Omega, he's got his hands full with Takeshita and Jericho and stuff. If you want to face somebody, face me. And that would kind of set up this match. And like I mentioned, I was going to do the 6-man involving all these guys, but I was really looking at my card, and I was like, we don't really have too many big one-on-one matches, like marquee matches. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do a tag team match with Jericho and Takeshita and the Golden Lovers. And the other match I'm going to get out of this is Hangman Page versus Will Ospreay in one-on-one match for the US title, the IWGP US title. And of course, I would have Will Ospreay win. And I would actually have some shenanigans here. I'd have Jericho get involved and help Will Ospreay win. And that would actually set up a match between Hangman Page and Jericho at All Out, which we'll talk about in a second. We're almost done with the All In pay-per-view. But basically, Don Callis, you know, he has this new family. He's got Takeshita. You know, he's trying to recruit Jericho. He's pretty much already recruited him. And he's kind of recruited Will Ospreay as well. So I would have Jericho kind of help Ospreay win because Don Callis kind of asked him for a favor. And then that would lead to a match between Hangman Page and Jericho at All Out, like I just mentioned. So that would be a big match for All Out. And then last but not least, we got one more match for All In, the main event. It would be FTR defending the AEW World Tag Team titles against Adam Cole and MJF and the Young Bucks. It would actually be a three-way here. So for this, I've really been enjoying what they've been doing with MJF and Adam Cole, the stuff that they've been doing, the tag team stuff. And I know they had the big match on Collision, but for me, I would kind of continue this and build towards something bigger. I would have them continue to feud, and I would even get the Young Bucks involved. Now that the Young Bucks and, the Elite are kind of done with Blackpool Combat Club, for me personally, I would bring the Young Bucks back into the tag team division. I think they're sorely missed. I think the Young Bucks are better in the tag team division. I mean, I like them as the Elite and stuff, but I think right now we need them back in the tag team division, and that would kind of lead to this like three-way match, FTR, Young Bucks, and Adam Cole and MJF. You can even play on the fact that Young Bucks and Adam Cole used to be friends, or close. I mean, they're probably still friends, whatever, but kind of use that like, why are you teaming up with MJF? The guy hates you, he backstabs everyone, and then Adam Cole would be defending him like, no, he's changed, he's reformed. He's different. He's not the Maxwell Jacob Friedman you know. And then you can have FTR be like, dude, he did it to us. Actually, I don't remember if MJF turned on FTR in the Pinnacle. I can't recall how that feud ended or that group ended, so that might have not happened. But yeah, here I would have the three-way match, and I would actually have FTR win here and retain their AEW World Tag Team titles. And with Adam Cole and MJF, I would have a little bit of friction here. For me, I would have, I don't know what exactly, I do have something planned for the All Out match, but I don't know what I would do here. I probably should have thought of something better, I apologize. But basically, I'd have FTR win here. It would lead to FTR and the Young Bucks at All Out, which we'll talk about in just a second because we're about to get to that pay-per-view. With MJF and Adam Cole, it would kind of tease dissension in their group. It's like, will they, won't they, are they going to, is it time? But for the time being, I would keep them together. So, main event, FTR retains their AEW World Tag Team titles against Adam Cole and MJF and the Young Bucks. And I would actually have them pin Adam Cole because I'm not going to have them pin MJF because he's the world champion. And I'm not going to have them pin the Young Bucks because that's going to kind of lead into the match at the All Out pay-per-view. So very stacked card in my opinion, and honestly, that's just the first one. We still got another one to go. But before we get into All Out, I told you guys I did have a Collision show that's pretty stacked. So we're going to quickly go through that. I've got 5 matches for that. The first match would be the Acclaimed and Sky Blue taking on QTV, which would be Johnny TV, QT Marshall, and Harley Cameron. The past few weeks on AEW, you've had the Acclaimed kind of feuding with QTV and Harley Cameron, which I'm not really a fan of because you really have like the Acclaimed versus Harley Cameron. So it's like kind of like 2 guys versus 1 girl, and they're dissing each other over rap. It's kind of a stupid feud. I'm not really a fan of it. But to kind of put an end to this feud, I would have the Acclaimed bring in Sky Blue to get some, they get someone to kind of handle Harley Cameron while they beat up QT Marshall and Johnny TV. And that would be the 6-man tag team match. I would have the Acclaimed and Sky Blue win here. You can have Sky Blue and Harley Cameron kind of feud together after this match. But for here, I would definitely split the Acclaimed and QTV, have them go their separate ways, and figure out something for both groups to do. But yeah, I would end this feud immediately. Next match, kind of coming from the All In pay-per-view, where we've got the Hardy Boys and Ethan Page versus Bullet Club Gold members Juice Robinson and the Guns. This kind of is stemming from the All In pay-per-view where we had the 8-man tag. The big match that I'm really kind of building towards coming out of that match would be Pac versus Jay White. But let's have a nice 6-man tag team match here on Collision. Ethan Page and the Hardys versus Bullet Club Gold. And since Bullet Club Gold picked up the win, I would give the Hardy Boys and Ethan Page the win here on Collision. Next match, we've got the Best Friends taking on the Blackpool Combat Club members Wheeler Yuta and Claudio Castagnoli. And I would have the Parking Lot Brawl here. I know they just did it on this past episode of Rampage, and for me, it just kind of seems like they're really blasting through all these gimmick matches. Like, we just had the 3-way tag team match. Then we have the three-way hardcore match. In the same week, you have the three-way hardcore match on Dynamite, and then on Rampage, you have the parking lot brawl. It's like, bro, what is the hurry? Let's spread this out. For me, I would have held off on the parking lot brawl, and I would have had it here on the Collision show before the All Out pay-per-view. I would give the win to Claudio and Wheeler Yuta, but I have no idea why they fast-track that. In the same week, too, as the hardcore match, you have the... blew my mind, but, maybe they have something better planned. But for me, I would save off on the parking lot brawl. I'd build it up over weeks. Obviously, the big match would be Jon Moxley and Orange Cassidy for the international title, but I would still have the best friends feud with Wheeler Yuta and Claudio, and you still got a story there where Wheeler Yuta used to be part of the best friends, but he ended up leaving them for the Blackpool Combat Club, so there's still a story there that you can build upon. But yeah, I would have the parking lot brawl here on Collision, and I would have Blackpool Combat Club go over. Next match is an interesting one. It's not one that I've kind of talked about, but it's kind of been built towards, actually because of the last match. We've got Kris Statlander defending her AEW TBS title against Serena Deeb. So as I was mentioning before, between the feud of the Blackpool Combat Club, Best Friends, Orange Cassidy, you've got Kris Statlander, who's kind of just been on the sidelines for now with the Best Friends. And because Blackpool Combat Club doesn't have any women in their group, she's just kind of there. So on one Dynamite, I would have the Blackpool Combat Club beat up the Best Friends and Orange Cassidy, and then I would have Kris Statlander come out and be like, yo, stop attacking them. These are my friends, please stop. And then I would have Serena Deeb come out, and she would actually be the newest member of the Blackpool Combat Club. I think her style fits the group tremendously. I was debating between her and Layla Hirsch, but I think Serena Deeb would be the better fit. I think she's a solid wrestler, and I just think she kind of needs a push. And I think putting her with the Blackpool Combat Club would kind of legitimize her. And this is one of those things where I'm kind of hitting the reset button on the women's division by aligning the women with the men's group. It kind of, in my opinion, I feel like it will kind of legitimize them more with the fans. So I think this would be a good look. I think the Blackpool Combat Club should add a women's wrestler, and I think it should be Serena Deeb. For me, I would actually have Serena Deeb beat Kris Statlander with the TBS title. Basically, the storyline I would have here is, Kris Statlander, she just came back from an injury, some sort of leg injury, I forgot what it was, but because Serena Deeb is such a technical mastermind, I would have her focus on that body part the whole match, and eventually she puts her in a hold, a submission, and, Kris Statlander, she can no longer take the pain or risk another injury, so she ends up tapping out and losing the TBS title. So I would have Serena Deeb win the title here, and she would be the newest member of the Blackpool Combat Club. I think that'd be a pretty cool thing to do. And then maybe you can even build towards like a big tag team match, mixed gendered, where you have Best Friends, Orange Cassidy, and Kris Statlander taking on Blackpool Combat Club and Serena Deeb. I think that'd be cool. And then the main event of Collision would be Sting, Keith Lee, and Dustin Rhodes taking on Brian Cage and the Gates of Agony for the ROH six-man tag team titles. We kind of talked about these guys earlier with All In, with the Darby Allin, Nick Wayne, Mogul Embassy stuff. Basically, I would have Nick Wayne and Darby Allin go off and do their own thing with Swerve and Era Fox, and then I would have the rest of the guys kind of, have a six-man tag team match. You've got Brian Cage and the Gates of Agony. They're the ROH six-man tag team champions, and I would actually have them put them on the line here against Keith Lee, Dustin Rhodes, and Sting. And honestly, I would have new Ring of Honor six-man tag team champions. I would give the titles to Sting, Keith Lee, and Dustin Rhodes. That's honestly such a weird pairing. I would actually kind of like to see it. I think the Brian Cage and the Gates of Agony, they've held the titles for quite a long time. There's really no one that matches up well to them because they're such huge guys. But on the other side here, you got Keith Lee, huge dude. Dustin Rhodes, huge dude. Sting, shockingly, kind of a huge dude. So I think this would be a solid match here. Actually, I don't know if it'd be a great match, but it would be kind of fun to watch. And yeah, I would have Sting, Keith Lee, and Dustin Rhodes win the 6-man tag team titles. I don't know how long I would keep the titles on him, but I think that would be kind of fun to have like Sting and Keith Lee and Dustin Rhodes appear on Ring of Honor from time to time with the titles, and it would kind of incentivize people to be like, oh, if you want to watch the 6-man tag team champions, you gotta watch Ring of Honor this week, which means you gotta buy the Honor Club. And hopefully that would bring more eyes to the Ring of Honor roster and the Ring of Honor program. So that is something that I would do. That is the Collision show. And then next, we're going to start getting into All Out. We got a little bit of a pre-show here. It's a quick one compared to the All In pre-show. So to start us off with the All Out pre-show, we've got Willow Nightingale taking on Nyla Rose. For me, the storyline for this is I want to push Willow Nightingale as a big baby face. This would kind of be a rematch from their match from the Owen Hart Cup tournament. And basically for this, I would have Willow win, so she can look strong, and then on the following Dynamite, the Dynamite after this pay-per-view, I would have Taya Valkyrie versus Willow Nightingale in a #1 contenders match, and then whoever wins that would go and face the women's champion in the future, and for that I would have Taya Valkyrie win, and she would go and face whoever is the champion at the time. But yeah, I would give Willow a little bit of a push here. I know it doesn't sound like a push where I'm like having her win here and then lose against Taya. It wouldn't be a clean victory, so you could potentially build up to a rematch in the future. But yeah, I would have Willow win here and then lose to Taya on Dynamite in the #1 contenders match. Next thing on the pre-show, this isn't really a match, it's more of a segment, and it would be the Hot Boy Summer group, Peter Avalon, Ryan Nemeth, and Cesar Bonone. You could also include JD Drake, but I'd probably separate him because he's got his thing going on with the Workhorsemen. But you can have them come out, whatever. I'm not opposed to it, but I just have the 3 of them instead without JD Drake. Basically, I would have them come out and be like, hey, this is the biggest party of the summer. Summer's almost over. We're here to celebrate Hot Boy Summer before it turns to Fuck Boy Fall. I don't know. You could come up with some alliteration there, but yeah, it would basically just be them coming out to celebrate Hot Boy Summer. And what I would do with this segment here is I would have Eddie Kingston come out and make his return to AEW because he's been out of action, because he's been in the G1. I would have him come out. He'd be super pissed because like, what the fuck is going on in this ring? I would have him beat them all up, basically just spinning backhand fists to everybody. And after he beats everyone up, he would get on the mic and challenge Claudio Castagnoli to a Ring of Honor title match on the next Dynamite. And then you'd have Claudio come out and they would brawl. And that would obviously lead to a match. I don't know if I would have it on the next Dynamite. Obviously, he challenges him for the next Dynamite. But I might have like Eddie Kingston versus like one of the members of the Hot Boy Summer on the next Dynamite. And then you can kind of build towards a Ring of Honor title match in the coming weeks. But that would be something that I would build towards, is Eddie Kingston versus Claudio for the Ring of Honor world title. And actually, speaking of Ring of Honor, the main event for the pre-show would be a 3-way ROH Tag Team title match. You've got Aussie Open defending their Ring of Honor Tag Team titles against the Lucha Bros, who are the former Tag Team champions, and the third team of Daniel Garcia and Sammy Guevara. So obviously Aussie Open, they're the world champions, the tag team champions, Lucha Bros, former champions, and then you got Daniel Garcia and Sammy Guevara. Obviously Jericho Appreciation Society is broken up, but for me, I would kind of keep them as a team. I've been enjoying what they've been doing in the tag team eliminator tournament and what they've been doing after, so for me, I would kind of keep them together. And because the AEW tag team title picture is kind of full at the moment, especially with the return of the Young Bucks, I would have them go for the Ring of Honor tag team titles. And to be honest, I would probably put the titles on them. I would put the titles on Daniel Garcia and Sammy Guevara. I would make them the new Ring of Honor tag team champions. I think that would be a fun thing to do. I'd love to see them celebrate after the match by doing some dancing. I mean, I like Aussie Open as the tag team champions, but I think Daniel Garcia and Sammy, with them breaking up from Jericho Appreciation Society, like I mentioned before, you know, they're just kind of there. They got really nothing to do, so I'd keep them as a tag team, and I would throw the Ring of Honor tag team titles on them. That was the pre-show for All Out. Now we're going to get into the All Out pay-per-view. I hope you guys have been enjoying all these matches and storylines I've been talking about. I put a lot of thought into these, and I really wanted to put on a good show. So I hope, you know, you can visually kind of see it and be like, you know what? that's a solid fucking pay-per-view. I would buy that. But let's get into the meat and potatoes. We got AEW All Out coming from Chicago because, you know, they don't run Chicago enough times. But all that aside, let's get into the pay-per-view. So, the first match for the card, I would have it open with Pac taking on Jay White. We talked about this match a little bit in All In with them in the 8-man tag match, and this would be the big one-on-one match that I would build towards. Now, I just saw a news report that Pac might be injured, like he was pulled from Rampage or Collision or something because he suffered an injury. Now, all the matches that I've built towards has taken into account all the injured people, like Bryan Danielson, for example. He's injured. I didn't include him in anything. Anybody that was injured, I made sure not to include them. So I made this pay-per-view before Pac got injured, but in case that he can't compete in the one-on-one match against Jay White, I would actually end up changing the 6-man tag match from Collision, from the Hardys and Ethan Page versus the Bullet Club in 6-man tag team action. I'd probably just make it a regular tag team match, the Guns taking on Hardy Boys. And if Pac can't compete, I would have Ethan Page versus Jay White in a one-on-one match at All Out. I would still have it open the show. For me, I'm going to go with Pac not being injured because, like I said, I made this pay-per-view before it was announced that he was injured. So we're going to go with Pac on this one. But yeah, it would be an awesome one-on-one match. I'd actually really love to see that. But for me, I would give the big win to Jay White here. He's someone I would definitely try and build towards as a top guy and potentially even a number one contender for the world title. We'll have to wait to see. So yeah, Pac versus Jay White. I'm going to go with Jay White, and that would be the opening match. After that, we got Ricky Starks defending his newly won TNT title against Christian Cage. So like I mentioned in All In, we had Ricky Starks versus Luchasaurus. He beat Luchasaurus there. You know, Christian Cage is like, you know, you didn't beat the true TNT champion. You didn't beat me. And Ricky Starks is like, all right, if you want a match, just let me know. I will beat the real TNT champion, and we can do it at All Out. And basically that would lead to a one-on-one match. And for me, I would still have Ricky retain here. I would have him beat Christian Cage as well and continue on with the AEW TNT title. You could put it on Christian, and you can have him do a little feud. You know, with the TNT title, they're not really afraid to have short reigns. Like, you have one guy win it 1 week and then another guy win it 3 weeks later. For me, I'd probably keep it on Ricky for a little bit and have him have, like, a decent run because the TNT title is just kind of hot potatoed so much that it's like, you know what, let's keep it on Ricky for a little bit. But I kind of like that they hot potato it a lot because it makes the matches more unpredictable, where it's like, hey, you might see a title match. If you see a TNT title match, there's a high chance that the title could change, where, you know, you got other matches like Orange Cassidy with the international title. A lot of the people that he's been facing, it's like, okay, they're not going to beat him, but they're going to have a good match. But with the TNT title, it's like, it's 50-50, anybody could win. So I kind of like that aspect, but for me, I would have Ricky Starks win and retain his AEW TNT title. I would potentially continue this feud. I'm not sure, but potentially. It's on the table, but I do have something else in mind. I'll kind of talk about it later. Next match, we've got Jack Perry defending the FTW title against Hook. Like I mentioned at the All In pay-per-view, you'd have Jack Perry defeat RVD and retain the title, and then have Hook make the big save after the match, and that would lead to a big one-on-one match here. I'd probably make it an Extreme Rules match or Chicago Street Fight, some sort of gimmick match. I'd probably put Extreme in the title of the match, where it's like Extreme Rules match, or even though they're in Chicago, maybe make it a Philly Street Fight, you know, because ECW. But yeah, I would probably have Hook win here. Honestly, with this match, I'd probably go 50-50. I like what they've been doing with Jack Perry, and I don't know if he should beat Hook again. I would probably give the win to Hook. See, for me, I kind of want to get rid of the FTW title, right? I think it's so worthless. I don't know why people compete over it. I don't know why they hold it in such high regard. The title means nothing. It is just visually a prop. I honestly hate the title. I would like to get rid of it. To be honest, what I would do on Dynamite leading into the FTW title match, I would have Jack Perry throw it in a dumpster, set it on fire, no more FTW title, and that would kind of put another layer on the storyline where Hook is so pissed off. Jack Perry destroyed this memento of Taz's, and Yeah, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to not make it an FTW title match. I'm going to have Jack Perry destroy it on the Dynamite before All Out, and then it would lead to an Extreme Rules match at the pay-per-view, and I would have Hook win here in a nice competitive match. So that way we get rid of the FTW title, and they can kind of, do whatever after the pay-per-view. But yeah, get rid of this FTW title. I think it's a cancer. Next match, we've got Jericho taking on Hangman Page. We talked about this on All In as well. As you can see, All In, even though I made it its own separate card, it was a lot of building towards All Out, so just want to make mention of that. But yeah, I would have Jericho versus Hangman Page here. Now, I had a couple other matches in mind. The other one was, if I did the 6-man at All In, the Jericho, Takeshita, Ospreay versus Omega, Hangman Page, and Kota Ibushi. If I did that there, I would have 3 singles matches here. So I would have done Jericho and Kota Ibushi, Hangman Page versus Will Ospreay for the US title here. I wouldn't have done it all at All In. And then I would have had Omega Takeshita. But because I changed it to just a tag team match, and I had the Ospreay match versus Page at All In, I decided not to do that. I could have done Jericho versus Kota Ibushi here, but because the storyline of Jericho costing Hangman Page the match against Ospreay, I would have Jericho versus Hangman Page here. And another layer to this match is this is the 5th annual All Out pay-per-view. At the first All Out pay-per-view, we had the main event there to crown the first ever AEW World Champion was Chris Jericho versus Hangman Page. So 5 years later, they're having another rematch. You can kind of tie that into the story, but the main story would be Jericho cost Hangman Page the match against Ospreay at All In, so they're going to have a big match here. And I'd probably give the match to Hangman Page because he did lose to Ospreay at All In, so I would go with Hangman Page. He can get his revenge because Jericho did end up winning the first ever AEW World title against Hangman Page, so Hangman Page finally gets his retribution and defeats Chris Jericho at All Out. Next match, we've got the House of Black with Julia Hart defending the AEW World Trios title against LFI. Now, I was very torn of who I should include here. Now, House of Black, Brody, Buddy, and Malachi. But for LFI, you kind of got 4 members. You've got Andrade, you've got Rush, you've got Preston Vance, and you do have Drolistico. He is kind of forgotten about because he doesn't really appear too much. He's more of a Ring of Honor guy. But for me personally, I'm going to make the decision to include Preston Vance. So the LFI team would be Andrade, Roosh, and Preston Vance. I would leave out Drolistico, and I'll kind of mention that in a second. But I would have LFI win here. I would have them become the new AEW Trios champions. House of Black, they've had a good run with it, but, let's give the title to somebody else. I've really enjoyed Andrade's run so far, like I mentioned earlier. Roosh, he just signed a new contract with AEW, so he's going to be there for the long term. And then Preston Vance, he's kind of just there. He hasn't really done much with LFI. On the other All Out video that I did last year, I had a big match between Preston Vance and Chris Jericho. And Preston Vance is just someone that I'd like to see push. I don't think he needs like a monster push, but just I think he can be used a little bit better. And I had a whole thing with like Dark Order and stuff, and I'd highly recommend go watch that video and how I break down the story. But yeah, I would have Preston be part of the Trios team here. Eventually, you can kind of have him phased out where you can kind of have the Freebird rule with LFI, where Drolistico is kind of a co-champion because he's part of the group. And then eventually you can have Andrade and Roosh, and whenever they have a title match, they have Drolistico instead of Preston. And then eventually you can have Preston be like, dude, what the fuck? I won these titles with you guys. I'm a part of this group. And then eventually you can have them turn on him, throw him out of the group, and maybe, put him back with Dark Order. Just be like, family doesn't turn on family. Welcome back. And then Preston comes back to Dark Order, and then you can do like John Silver and Alex Reynolds and Preston Vance taking on LFI for the Trios title, or you want to throw Evil Uno. You can throw any combination of them. Obviously, you gotta have Preston Vance in there, but yeah, that's something I would probably set up. But that wouldn't be for like months to come. For now, I would have LFI win. They would have a dominant run. And then eventually they'd be like, Preston, why the fuck are you with us? We're like a Mexican group. We're all proud Mexicans. champions. You're just some white kid. Get the fuck out of here. Dralistico, he's the third champion, not you. Get the fuck out. They beat him. They leave him bloodied. And you can build up to that like 6 months out. But that is something I'd probably set up for the future. So, new Trios champions, LFI. Next match, we got Jon Moxley challenging Orange Cassidy for the AEW International title. And honestly, with this one, I would actually kind of like to see it because these are two guys who have been staples of AEW and haven't really crossed paths. So this would be an interesting match. But I would probably give the win to Jon Moxley. I've loved Orange's run as international champion. I think he's had some killer matches. There was a point where he was wrestling on like every Dynamite, opening the show and just having bangers. The storyline I would kind of have is like after having so many consecutive matches, his body's kind of breaking down. And Jon Moxley's kind of a bigger guy, tougher guy, and Orange puts up a hell of a fight, but eventually Jon Moxley would actually end up picking up the victory, and that is something I would actually look forward to. It kind of, not to discredit Orange Cassidy, but it would really elevate the international title, having, a former 3-time world champion. I think he's 3-time world champion, Moxley, 2 or 3, but I believe it's 3. Having a former world champion win the international title. And what I would have him do is be like, you know what, Orange Cassidy, you put up a hell of a fight, and I respect what you've done with this title, and I'm going to do exactly what you've done. I'm going to do weekly title matches. I'm open to all comers, and basically he would kind of do something similar to Orange Cassidy, where every week he would kind of put the title on the line. Maybe not every week, but maybe at least 2 times a month he would wrestle on Dynamite and put the title up for grabs against, whoever it may be. So I would give, I would make Moxley the new international champion here, but shout out to Cassidy. He has had a great run with the title. A few more matches on the card. Next match is going to be Darby Allin and Nick Wayne taking on Swerve Strickland and AR Fox in some sort of gimmick match. Now, the match that I have written down is a gimmick match that is very synonymous with two guys here. And I was trying to think of a different way to kind of phrase this match, but I'm just going to go with what I have written here. It would be a Hell of War match. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, Swerve Strickland and AR Fox, they had a brutal feud in Lucha Underground, and it culminated in a Hell of War match where it is just a bloody, violent spectacle, very crazy stuff. I'd highly recommend checking it out. And I think for this tag team match, there's a lot of bad blood here, so you'd have to do some sort of stipulation. And I was trying to think of different ways to kind of give this match like a cool name, and I really couldn't think of anything. So we're just going to call it a Hell of War match. Now, it's probably still owned by Lucha Underground. I don't know if Lucha Underground still kind of exists, and they own the rights to a Hell of War match, but we're just going to make it a Hell of War match. And it would be Darby and Nick Wayne taking on Swerve Strickland and AR Fox. It would just be a brutal bloodbath. Like, everyone's getting color, everyone's going barbed wire, glass, thumbtacks. We're going crazy with it. A Hell of War match with a title like that, you really got to deliver. I would tell these guys, you can do whatever the fuck you want. Like, just go full bore on it. And like I said, I really enjoyed the segment that they did on Dynamite. Also, like I mentioned earlier, I would take Darby away from the TNT title and focus on the Swerve Strickland AR Fox feud. And this would be a big showcase for Nick Wayne and AR Fox too, because he's been with AEW for a good while now, and he really hasn't done anything of note. And this is kind of his come out party to a major audience. So I'm looking for AR Fox and Nick Wayne to do some really big, cool stuff. I know Darby's going to do some crazy stuff. He does it in every fucking match. And Swerve Strickland, he's just the man. So he's going to do some cool stuff. But yeah, this would border on like a death match of sorts. I don't know if I'd go like full death match, like the light tubes. Even though I mentioned glass earlier, I'm not a fan of light tubes, but fuck it, use it in this match, do whatever you want. Just beat the shit out of each other. And the way the Hell of War match worked in Lucha Underground was, after they beat the hell out of each other, the winner had to throw the loser in the back of an ambulance. So it's technically like an ambulance match. You can call it an ambulance match, but I'm going to call it the Hell of War match. As far as a winner goes, I would probably go Darby and Nick Wayne. I would have them get the feud, especially after doing something so fucking disrespectful like going to the Buddy Wayne Academy and beating up his son and leaving him a bloody mess. Like, you gotta give the win to the baby faces. That is some super disrespectful shit. So yeah, I would have Darby Allin and Nick Wayne win, and I'd probably make them a tag team, to be honest, going forward. Put them in some tag team matches. Maybe eventually have a match with the AEW World Tag Team Champions, whether it's FTR or Young Bucks. We'll talk about that later. But I'd kind of phase out Sting, who's Darby's kind of tag team partner regularly. I have him more in like the background. Obviously, I made him the ROH 6-man tag team champion on Collision with Keith Lee and Dustin Rhodes. So you can kind of make those guys a bit of a unit. But yeah, I would kind of phase Sting out as Darby's tag team partner and slot in Nick Wayne. But yeah, as far as this match, Darby, Nick Wayne, they take the win here. Next match, we got a match I'm really looking forward to. I very much so expect it to be announced, whether it happens at All In or All Out. Honestly, can't wait to see it. It is Takeshita taking on Omega, finally one-on-one. Don Callis' former son taking on his new son. I'm a big fan of both of these guys. I think they have a very similar style, and I think they can put on a hell of a match. And for me, I would probably go Kenny Omega, get the big win over Takeshita, kind of throw it in Don Callis' face. You could continue the feud. For me personally, I don't know if I'd continue the feud. I mean, I probably would. For me, I'd probably try and push Kenny Omega as, like, you know, a singles guy again, because like I mentioned, you know, I want to push the Young Bucks as a tag team. You know, what am I going to do with Hangman Page and Kenny Omega? Push them as singles guys. So I don't know if I'd push them right into the world title picture. You know, you can have them enter a feud with like Jay White, you know, former leaders of the Bullet Club. You can do that. You can have them go for the world title. You can have him do a couple different things, but I think I might continue the Don Callis Kenny Omega feud. I don't know where I would go next, but I think I'd probably continue that for maybe a month or two more. That I didn't really think that far ahead in terms of this feud, but yeah, I'd give Kenny Omega the big win, and not sure what I would do with him next. Next match, we've got the AEW Women's title on the line. We've got Hikaru Shida defending her newly won women's title against Ruby Soho and Toni Storm in a three-way. So the storyline for here, Hikaru Shida, she defeated Saraya at All In. 1/3 of the Outcasts. You've got Toni Storm, former women's champion. She wants her rematch. I would somehow weasel Ruby Soho in here. I don't know how. I didn't think of it that far, but basically what I would do is I would have Hikaru retain, and I would basically have the Outcasts break up. It's a feud that's kind of run its course. I mentioned earlier we're kind of hitting the reset button on the women's division. We got a new TBS champion in Serena Deeb, who's now aligned herself with Blackpool Combat Club. And what I would do is I would take Toni Storm and I would align her with Bullet Club Gold. You've got her with Juice Robinson, who's her real-life husband. You've got Jay White. You've got the Guns. I think she could fit in quite well. I think she's got a good attitude for those guys and kind of repackage her as a dominant heel. So that's what I would do with Toni Storm. I'd break up the Outcast, assign her with Bullet Club Gold. And as you can see, like I mentioned, with Blackpool Combat Club and Bullet Club Gold, let's give the women, let's put them with the men. I'm not saying we're going to have intergender matches. I mean, you could, like mixed tag team matches, but I'm not going to have like men versus women. But I think, like I mentioned earlier, putting the women with the men legitimizes the women. I think that they're kind of seen more as stars. But yeah, I would have Hikaru retain her women's title. And like I mentioned on the pre-show, you have Willow and Taya Valkyrie. The next feud I would kind of have for Hikaru Shida would be her versus Taya Valkyrie for the women's title. And you could do that for like a month or two or whatever the case may be. But that would be the next big women's feud for the title. Next match, we've got the semi-main event. We've got FTR defending their AEW World Tag Team titles against the Young Bucks. Again, from All In, continuing, building up from All In. We had the three-way at All In, FTR, Young Bucks, and Adam Cole and MJF. MJF and Adam Cole, specifically Adam Cole, ended up taking the loss there. Young Bucks, they make their case. Hey, we didn't get pinned. We're still #1 contenders. We've had 2 matches already. Young Bucks are up 1. FTR is up another on the second match. This is the big third match in the trilogy. They're going to have a one-on-one match. I was thinking about putting a gimmick on this match. The only one that I can think of that would kind of make sense would be a 2 out of 3 falls match. Or what you can do, this just popped into my head, you can do a 3 stages of hell match. And basically it would be 2 out of 3 falls match, but each fall is a different match. So for the first match, it would be like a regular tag team match. Second match, you can have, a table match. And then for the third match, maybe you have a steel cage match or a ladder match. That could be an idea. For me, I just have it as a regular tag team match, but I think it does need a gimmick match. I think it does need a big stipulation because this is the big third match in the trilogy. You know what? 3 stages of hell, I kind of like it. I don't know which match would be which. For the first match, I would do just a regular match, like I mentioned. For match number 2 and 3, maybe match number 2, you do a submission match, which is kind of like a no DQ match, because you can't get DQ'd. You can only win by submissions. You can have FTR win with like a sharpshooter or something like that, an homage to Bret Hart, because they love Bret Hart. And then the third match, I don't know, maybe cage match, maybe ladder match. I don't know if you'd want to go ladder match because it plays too much to the Young Bucks' strengths because they have a lot of experience in ladder matches where FTR does not. So for me, I would kind of try and find a middle ground match, and maybe steel cage might be the way to go. I'm really not sure. But now that I talk about it, I think a 3 stages of hell match would be pretty sweet. So yeah, first match, normal match, I'd give the win to the Young Bucks. Second match, maybe submission match or maybe a table match or something like that. And then third match, I would go steel cage match because I believe last year at All Out it was the Lucha Bros versus the Young Bucks in that famous steel cage match. So when they're building up to this match on Dynamite, FTR can be like, okay, third match, we're getting the champion's advantage, we're gonna pick the gimmick match. You lost in a steel cage match last year, so that might not be a strength of yours. Hey, we're gonna go in a steel cage match. So you know what? I just thought of this on the fly. I did not write this down. We're going to go with that. 3 stages of hell, regular tag team match, submission match / table match. I'm not sure which one I'd go with. Maybe submission match. But then it's kind of too similar to like the regular tag team match. Unless it's like a tornado tag submission match. I'm not sure. Maybe table match is just the way to go. But I think the third match should be a steel cage match. Or maybe make this a 30-minute Iron Man match. 2 out of 3 falls. I'm not sure. There's a lot of different things you can do. I'm going to go with 3 stages of hell. Each pinfall, different stipulation. To end out this match, I would have the Young Bucks win and become the new AEW World Tag Team Champions. And last but not least, the main event of AEW All Out. We finally got there, folks, after a good bit. Our main event is going to be MJF defending the AEW World title with Adam Cole in his corner, taking on the champion who never lost it, has won it twice, and never defended it. He would be facing CM Punk in a one-on-one match. And obviously, they have a lot of history. I don't really need to talk about it. Punk, he believes he's the real world's champion because he never lost it, which, like I mentioned, he's won it twice and never defended it. Every time he's won it, he got injured. The second time he won it, he got injured the same night. And the first time he won it, he got injured the same week that he won it when he did that stupid dive and broke his foot or whatever. So, yeah, he actually never has defended his world title. Fucking hilarious. But yeah, one-on-one match, MJF, CM Punk. I guess you can call it a unification match. For me, MJF is the world champion, even whatever Punk says. And for me, I think I would have MJF retain, but not without some funkiness. So what I would have play out for the end of the match, I would have MJF, he feels like he's about to lose. He's done everything he could to Punk. He's got the idea. I'm going to get the world title. I'm going to hit him with it. And the ref's not looking. I'm going to get the victory that way. and I would have MJF go get the title. As he's coming in the ring, Adam Cole grabs it from him and is like, no, Max, you're better than this. You're changed. You don't win matches like this anymore. You're better than that. You can beat him without this. And he would kind of fight Adam Cole on it like, no, I'm going to grab this and I'm going to win it my way. And then Adam Cole would talk him out. And MJF would be like, you know what, you're right. He would turn around. Punk would hit him with the go to sleep, go for the pin. 1, 2, kick out. So you think that Punk's going to win. But somehow MJF has enough in the tank to kick out. Or maybe he puts his foot on the rope because he's close enough from, the angle I just talked about. Or what you can do is have MJF, he tells Cole, you know what, take the title, I don't need to hit Punk with it. Turns around, walks into a go-to-sleep, but instead of getting hit with the go-to-sleep, he counters it, maybe goes for a roll-up, holds the tights or something like that, so he still kind of wins in a dirty fashion, and Punk is like, fuck this guy, goddamn snuck another win out of me. Actually, I don't think he's beaten Punk before. Anyways, whatever, it's not important. But basically, the end of the match would be MJF, Adam Cole brings the world title to MJF, and MJF would snatch it from him and be like, you tried to fuck me by taking the world title from me. I almost turned around, got hit with the go to sleep. Luckily, I'm smarter than that. Or maybe you can even have him have the dynamite diamond ring in his tights, and he clocks Punk with it while Adam Cole's kind of distracted with the world title. You can do something like that as well. Basically a finish where MJF tries to cheat, but Adam Cole stops him. But he still ends up cheating because he's still a scumbag. And then, after the match, you got MJF. He kind of feels like Adam Cole tried to betray him and cost him the world title. And this would lead to dissension between the two. I have enjoyed the tag team stuff that they've done and the segments that they've done, especially the one that they did for the video game. I thought that one was hilarious. But eventually this would all lead to dissension where MJF is like, you know what? Everyone's trying to fuck me, but I fuck them first before they have a chance to screw me over. And, he ends up beating up Adam Cole or whatever the case may be. And then what I would do with Punk, I would have him feud with Jay White. Punk kind of feels like he's still the number one contenders because Max cheated, but Jay White's like, nah, buddy, get in line. I won my match at All Out. You won it All In. You beat Zack Sabre, but you lost at All Out. You lost at the big one, buddy. Step in line, and that would lead to a feud between the two. They've kind of been feuding a little bit. It's mainly been like Bullet Club Gold versus like FTR and CM Punk. But what I would do here is like CM Punk, Jay White, one-on-one match. That's what I would build towards. And you can even make it a number one contenders match. So those would be a couple things to look forward to in the future. MJF and Adam Cole, and CM Punk versus Jay White. Both of those matches one-on-one. So, that is All Out. That was All In. That was all of it. That was All In. That was All Out. That was all around. I am done. I am exhausted. I'm actually hot as hell because whenever I have to record, I have to turn off the air conditioning because it makes too much noise in the background. So I'm just sweating my balls off while I'm talking about wrestling. When I do these type of videos and I try to do like how I would book, I try and put on the best show. And not only do I try and put on the best show, I try and make it all make sense. And I think I did a great job here, from All In to Collision to the pre-shows to All Out, stuff to look forward to in the future. I think not to pat myself on the back, I think I hit a hell of a home run. So I just got a little recap of what our champions would be, because a lot of titles changed hands after all those shows. AEW World Champion, still MJF. AEW Tag Team Champions would be the Young Bucks, who won them at All Out. The AEW TNT Champion would be Ricky Starks, who's the new champion that won it at All In. AEW International Champion is now Jon Moxley, who won it at All Out. AEW Trios Champion is now LFI, who also won it at All Out. The AEW Women's Champion is Hikaru Shida, who won it on the 200th episode of Dynamite, which had nothing to do with my booking. That's just something I'm kind of grandfathering in that happened in real life. And last but not least, the AEW TBS Champion is now Serena Deeb, who defeated Chris Statlander on Collision. So there is your new set of champions. And then we also have new Ring of Honor 6-man tag team champions in Sting, Keith Lee, and Dustin Rhodes. And Daniel Garcia and Sammy Guevara, the new ROH tag team champions. I didn't include those because, this is mainly an AEW show, so I want to focus on those champions. So that is going to be it for me. I want to know what you guys think in the comment section. Let me know about the shows. Let me know about All In. Let me know about Collision and All Out. Let me know what your you know, what you would look forward to the most, maybe your own fantasy card. Let me know in the comments section. What matches are you actually hoping to be announced on either card? Let me know all this stuff in the comment section. So I want to thank you guys all for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Keep up with everything that's going on the channel. I will catch you guys next time. And until then, guys, peace out.